There's another one you don't want to hear. Frankly, if you want. 1, 2, 3, set, go.
Hello and welcome to episode 30 of the Power Chord Hour podcast. Thank you so much for checking it out. I'm your host, Anthony Merchant, here with you. I cannot believe we're on episode 30 already of this podcast. And I can't believe it is already August. I don't know where the hell time has went, but it went somewhere, and I would like some of it back. But alas, I don't think that's going to happen. Thank you so much for checking out this week's episode, and it's one that I love. This one I was very excited about. I'm talking to Christian Lesperance of Jersey Interchange, and we get more into what Jersey Interchange is in this interview. But if you don't know, it is Christian and a bunch of other people from the New Jersey punk scene of that, the late 90s, the early 2000s, that whole punk, pop punk, ska, emo scene that was so near and dear to a lot of people's hearts, including mine. Even though I wasn't there, I've learned more about it, discovered the bands, and have just fallen in love. It's a scene that I think was really special. And anyways, he does it with members of that scene, and they're covering other bands from that scene. So you'll hear a member of one New Jersey band covering Lane Meyer or covering Humble Beginnings. It's really cool. They have some, and it's funny too. They have a bunch of former guests of the show doing it. Heath Saraceno being on a few of them from Midtown. And also, I know it's not out yet, but our very first guest actually on the show, Steve Neurotic from Shower with Goats, I believe he's doing a song later on. But it's a really cool project. They're putting out songs every Monday, and it's just so awesome. So, to have Christian on and talk about the project and just really the New Jersey punk scene of that whole, once again, late 90s, early 2000s, about, 10 years in there, kind of talking to him about those kind of 10 years and what made that scene special. And it is nice because I wasn't there, and, the information that you learn, at least for me, is all secondhand. But to have someone who was actually there to talk about it and, kind of educate me more on, on that scene, I love it. And it's funny, too. It just comes up so much, I feel like, on the show in general, in this podcast. But that was just such a special scene, and it's something to really be kind of studied. We get into it in here, and I've talked about it to other guests who've been on the show. So, this is multiple people also saying this, too. And we're talking about a local scene that would draw on the regular 100 or 150 people. And that's sometimes on a low night. There were nights where they were getting 400 people in VFW halls. And if you're listening to this, and more than likely you're a music fan, and you're probably, if not now, at some point in your life, you've probably been part of a scene or went to local shows. And I don't think I have to tell you that most local shows anywhere do not get that many people. That is humongous. There are cities out there, in New Jersey just in general too, not one location. These shows were going on all around, I believe, South Jersey back in the day. And they were pulling in more than probably a local show in say, even Chicago maybe would be pulling in. They're pulling more in there from a band from a small little town in New Jersey. It's an amazing thing. And not to mention so many of those bands who, went into obscurity or kind of harder to find now, featuring members who went on to form other bands that were huge and have been a huge part of, really modern pop music even. It's insane to look at the list of people who really came from that scene. And just such a special thing. So anytime I get to talk about it, I'm always stoked. And, this episode is kind of all dedicated to it. It's funny because, those questions come up. They, Jersey Interchange is also covering a lot of artists who we have had on the show, past guests. And, it always just comes up for a little while, but I try not to make the interview all about that scene from back in the day. But it's I'm always, anyone who was a part of it, I always like to talk to more about it. So, very, very cool. We're going to get into that interview. Before we do, though, I am, as I'm recording this, I'm doing this intro. I interviewed Christian the other day in my home studio, but right now I'm recording this intro at the WRFA studios. And I just want to give a huge shout out to our listener, Grace. She's been a fan of the radio show. We just celebrated our 200th episode of the radio show last Friday. And she's been, I can't think of a person who like hit us up on the email or anything before her. I mean, she's like OG, like fan number one, has been listening now for years. I mean, literally years. We've been on the radio since 2016 now. And anyways, she got us some shirts made. These things look awesome. And she just came to the studio real quick and went downstairs, met her outside because we are locked in here, and we are not allowed to have guests outside of the DJs basically at WRFA. So I had to go down there and meet her, but it was very nice to finally meet her in person. Been emails and stuff back and forth throughout the year. She always sends in really good song requests, and I like it because she'll get me with stuff that I've never heard, like old school like punk rock hardcore from like the late 70s and like early 80s. Like she'll just throw me one that I've just never heard before. And then sometimes she'll also just like request classics like the Dead Boys or something like that, like just a classic punk band like that. Or Naked Ray Gun's another one. I think she's requested Naked Ray Gun a couple times, and Death, a really good band from the 70s, kind of obscure but a really, really good one. And so yeah, I mean, if she's not sending one that I've never heard before, she sends one where I go like, damn, like respect for requesting that. Like damn, like you went deep into like your musical mind to find that one, someone she asked for. But shout out to her. These shirts look amazing. She got some made last year too, which was very nice. And this is a brand new design. And, so I've a couple people have asked about them before because I've been teasing them, but I finally have them in hand. And, I didn't pay for them. A listener got them made, and I think that's just so cool of her to do. So, I would feel weird selling them. So they are free. What I am doing, though, is if you want one, just leave a review wherever you listen to your podcast, probably just Apple Podcasts. I say this every time. I don't know if there's a rating system on any other one, but wherever you listen to it, if there's a place to rate it there. And send me a screenshot. Send it to powerchordhour@gmail.com, and I'll send you a free Power Chord Hour shirt and some stickers and guitar picks. And just basically a little Power Chord Hour care package as a thank you for rating the show. We're still new here, and we only got a couple ratings on Apple Podcasts. So if you want to go, really anywhere you listen to it, you can rate it. But definitely if you're on Apple iTunes or Apple Podcast, if you can rate us there. We only have a few right now, and it would be great if you could up those reviews for us. But yeah, right now it is time to get into it. Our interview with Christian Lesperance, the genius behind Jersey Interchange. Very excited for you to hear this one. Here it is right here on the Power Chord Hour podcast. Right now on the Power Chord Hour, we're talking to Christian Lesperance, who has recently started, this is so cool, a music project called Jersey Interchange, where he's been covering classic songs from the late 90s, early 2000s New Jersey punk scene, which we talk about on the show constantly. So this is right up my alley. He's doing it with members from that scene. He has like 50 different artists. It's really, really cool. We're going to, I'm not doing it justice. We're going to really get into it right now and talk about the whole project. So Christian, man, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing really well. I've been really excited to do this. And, like the little rundown I just gave is just kind of like the tip of the iceberg with it. But I want to get into what you're doing with Jersey Interchange. I think it's so cool. You want to give like a quick little, like, I mean, quick, give a little rundown of what the actual project is and what you're doing with it.
Sure. I guess my elevator pitch is, this is basically a project that I've put together where, I've pretty much brought together all the people that I either was friends with or were influenced by or are friends with now to kind of recreate, re-envision, and just like reinvigorate these songs that, me and my friends kind of sung along to at all these shows back in, from 1996 through, let's say, 2003. That's a good time period. and basically, 20 years later, kind of just like giving them a facelift, with different interpretations from all over the board. So, we've so far, as of this, I guess we're on our 9th or 10th song. And, we release them every Monday, and I've luckily been able to put together a great kind of supporting cast and crew. I guess if you want to call it that. I work in the television industry, so that's my my entry into this. Basically, I have nothing to do with music. Just so I'll call everything. I'll use television terms for everything from now on. But but I really have been fortunate to work with so many great people, and honestly, people that I never thought I would ever have the luxury and privilege of working with, 20 years ago, let alone, 6 months ago. So.
Oh, I mean, it's insane. Like looking at the list of people that you have doing the project with. I mean, if you are a fan of like the New Jersey punk scene from that era that you're talking about, like that decade, about like 10 years in there, it's insane the list you have. Like, I mean, you have some real royalty in there. I mean, just from like every part of it too. That's the other thing I like, is it's kind of like every band from that scene, not just like, the straight up just punk ones or anything. It's kind of like there's some ska in there, there's punk, there's pop punk. Like you kind of have everyone from that era.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate the compliments. And I tried, I don't know, I had a diverse, palette back then too. So, I definitely liked a lot of punk, a lot of ska, a lot of hardcore. And the only thing I like that really isn't represented here is like death metal. But I'm not sure how that would flow with the audience.
That might be interesting.
No, but, right. I actually, a lot of what I listened to early on, even before punk, was metal. So that's actually how I got into the punk scene. Yeah, anybody that really played in the scene, and just, New Jersey had such a like breadth of, different styles, and it wasn't just like the punk rockers stayed on their side with the punk rockers, and the ska people stayed over there. New Jersey scene was like really mixed, and you had ska people that would go to see hardcore bands, and punk rockers that would go to see the pop punkers. So it's. Mm-hmm.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, like, back then too. I mean, would you see like mixed bills like that? Like, was there like a good amount of that where you would see like a pop punk band with a ska band with maybe like a more hardcore band?
Definitely, and actually, one of the bands that I think kind of like straddles that whole kind of weird line is the band Folly, who were, at first they were kind of like this ska rock band, and then all of a sudden they turned into the ska metal band. But all the punk kids liked them, all the hardcore kids liked them, and even ska people liked them. So it was like ska people, because kids don't like ska anymore. It's all
sadly.
Adults. Right now. Yeah, it was just a cool thing to be a part of. And I guess, and growing up as kind of like a quote unquote metalhead, it was very like a polarizing scene where you can only like metal. Oh, that new Megadeth record came out. Why are you listening to the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones? What are you like? It's just like, so when I got into punk and ska and all that stuff, it was kind of a nice breath away from, that whole kind of, you have to fit into this category and only listen to this or that or this, or you're not cool. You can't listen to our music. So I guess a lot of scenes obviously have that, but New Jersey was very fortunate, I guess. And you know what? I was doing some thinking about it. I don't really recall a scene that wasn't like a major city. So you had your Boston, you had obviously New York City, Chicago, whatever, that had such a diverse and, like just welcoming scene. Like we were like Jersey suburb kids, and you know, Long Island had their stuff too. But I really think that like we had like one of the strongest and honestly, it was all self-made. Like we built it from the ground up, and it was you know, I'm not giving myself credit for that, but like all the kids that I was friends with, and bands and promoters and just everybody that contributed, like really, you know, built this scene that people still today are benefiting from. You know what I mean?
Oh, I think absolutely. Like I've had people on here, including ones that, you know, are doing this project with you. And it always kind of, at some point I have to bring up that whole scene. I mean, even not being a part of it, talking about how big it is, you know, there's someone like me who years later discovered it, not even from New Jersey, you know, the impact it had. And it is really interesting. Like you were talking about how when you start to talk about that scene and all the shows that were going on and, you know, releasing all these records and all this different stuff, you kind of do forget. It's like, yeah, you guys were all like teens and like early 20s and stuff back then. Like you start to think about it and you go like, wow, that is impressive that like it was all kind of built up around teenagers, basically, you know, like teenagers, young adults, whatever you want to call it. And it's like, it's impressive, the output. Like, I mean, to even be able to go back now, I mean, you know, finding the scene years and years later after all those bands broke up, it's insane what there is to find. Like, there's a whole back catalog. It's not like 5 or 6 bands. It's like, my God, like you start going through and you'll find this band. It's like, oh yeah, well, this guy was a member of this band and then he was a member of this band.
Yep.
It's insane. Like that blows my mind. You go through and it's like, if you like this one band, you know, start with like a bigger one, like, you know, people know Saves the Day, but then you start going, oh, Cephaler, and then you start going down the list, and all of a sudden you're like, man, there's like 20 different bands who I'd never heard of before. It's like, wow, all from this scene and all so young.
Right. And you think about like what transpired from those bands that grew and grew and grew. You know, you have your, you know, like you said, Saves the Day, My Chemical Romance, Senses Fail, the Gaslight Anthem, Cobra Starship, you know, and those came from like mid-level bands, you know, and there was like a whole tier below that, not saying that they were bad or anything, but just as far as popularity goes. You know, one of, you know, current events, let's talk. One of the guys that was integral in our scene is now a Grammy-winning producer that literally is working with Taylor Swift like on a daily basis. Jack Antonoff from the band Fun and Steel Train.
Oh yeah.
He started out in a band, or at least this is where I knew of him from, was a band called Outline. And they were just like this, like they were younger than all of us too. They were like 16, 17, and they were playing like kind of snotty hardcore, I don't, bordering on kind of Kid Dynamite-esque
nice
music. They were a little bit more poppy than that, but this guy is like, you know, reached the heights of you know, music stardom as a producer.
Yeah. No, that I mean, all those guys really, like the I can't think of his name, but the other guy in Fun also was in a couple early like New Jersey, you know, like his start was in I can't think of the name. There's one that he was in. I'm totally blanking now, but the other guy in there I think was also, he got his start in an early like New Jersey pop punk band.
Yeah. It's crazy to kind of trace the lineage of these guys and girls who are out there now, like, you know, kind of just, you know, making lots of money and being famous. And it's one of those things where like you kind of can recall back to the moment where you were just hanging in, you know, as we used to do. We used to hang at a parking lot and at a Dunkin' Donuts at like 2 or 3 in the morning. You know, we were winners back then, but you know, we'd hang out at these parking lots or wherever they were, and you're just hanging with your friends, and then all of a sudden, your friends are off on tour with like, you know, The Used or, you know, Metallica. You know, it's just crazy, like overnight too. I don't know how many bands like that. It was just this weird succession of, oh, they just got signed. Oh, okay. 2 years later, I finally get to kind of catch up with them again, you know, after they've just toured the world. So and and a lot of us have stayed, friends over the years, and this has been now 20 years.
Wow.
Since all this kind of just like erupted.
Yeah, I mean,
the Jersey scene.
Could you see a shift too? Like once things started getting big, like was there like a shift kind of in there where you noticed like like bigger labels are kind of, there were eyes on you, and like people outside of the New Jersey scene were kind of paying attention? Like was there a time where you could see that happening?
Yeah, I think so. I think I saw it particularly with, I would say I saw it with Midtown the most, just because I knew them from their previous bands. Heath and Tyler were in a band called Nowhere Fast. Rob played drums in a band called The Royalties, and Gabe obviously played in Humble Beginnings. And all of a sudden they were in this band together, and that Sacrifice of Life EP came out on Pinball Records, which my friend Jay was the guy behind all those records. That's actually another label we should talk about, even though a lot of people might not know about it. But that label, Pinball Records, was actually really integral to the Jersey scene as far as getting the word out. They had a comp, which was really, I think a lot of people saw the first glimpses of these bands in that comp. But as far as Midtown goes, overnight you could see, like, they put out that EP and the crowds just were astounded, and you could just, the shows were just filled with energy. The girls were screaming. It's not even it sounds hokey, but like they had a following. So and then then they got plucked by Drive Thru, as did a bunch of other bands. And also, another band like Newfound Glory, I remember them coming up a few times, and it took them like maybe one or two shows before they got the kind of same reaction as like a Midtown. And you kind of knew, like, oh, this band's serious. Like, there's not just some, like, high-pitched pop punk band. So
yeah, you could tell, like that had to be neat to see that happening too. Like, to go like, oh, like there's something there with that band. Like they're doing something.
It really was. Yeah. And not even like, right, not even just the Jersey bands. Like, so many bands would come through with the same type of reaction, like Newfound Glory, like the Ataris, and actually, a band like My Chemical Romance. I'll be honest, I wasn't a fan at first of My Chemical Romance. I'm a huge Misfits fan and Glenn Danzig fan, and I think I took some weird offense to their like image at first.
I could see that. I don't feel like that's totally left field.
Right. But again, there's the closed-minded metalhead thing again. But like, they're one of my favorite bands, like to come out of the scene, and but at first, like, yeah, it was definitely a weird thing to see these guys who, okay, they put on eyeliner and they dressed in dark clothes, but they just tore the scene up. I mean, obviously, look at the place they ended up.
Oh yeah. Oh God. I mean, I feel like they've gotten bigger throughout the years. Like they're, I think, more massive now than ever.
It's crazy. I thought, like, or no, I didn't think, but like, it just seemed like, okay, these bands are all a flash in the pan. It's just a fad, I guess, but a lot of them have so much staying power.
Oh, I mean, that has to be, I mean, kind of continuing My Chemical Romance. I mean, to think of somebody seeing them whatever year they started, like 03, 04, maybe earlier, but like, if you saw them at like a VFW hall at that time,
right?
Who would even have the thought that, hey, and in like the year 2020, this band's going to be like selling out arenas. Like they're going to get back together and like tickets are just going to go like sell out in minutes.
Right.
Like who would think that? No one would even have the foresight for that.
No, nobody ever thought, when I went to go see, when I would go see like Humble Beginnings, did I ever think Gabe Saporta would be this like, rock star in Midtown, and then furthermore down the road in Cobra Starship? No, like he was just Gabe,
Yeah. I mean,
he put on a good show,
It's just, yeah, that has to be nuts to watch it all happen. I mean, that's it's a big reason why I like talking about that whole scene too, because like all these like bands are mentioning, it's like you realize how much they have to do with, I mean, really modern popular music. I don't think people realize that. Like everyone kind of starts somewhere, and there's huge roots in that whole like scene that would like, I think, blow people's minds if they're like, yeah, all those guys were like in pop punk bands like way back in the day, like those guys winning Grammys, or like you hear on the radio and stuff, they were all playing VFW halls.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And on the project, I was lucky to actually one of the people that was important to this project, just as a kind of not just as an influence for me, but also as a legitimizer for this Jersey Interchange project, was Heath Saraceno, who I know you've had on your show.
Very good guy.
Yeah. He and I, we've always been friends since, I think we probably met back in 98 or 99, whenever he was in Nowhere Fast. And I think we kind of bonded over our love of metal, and in specific like some Halloween albums, I think. But he's a great guy. Like when I asked him to help me with the project, and if he wanted to do a song, he was just like gung ho right out of the gate. And I asked him if he wanted to do a bigwig song, and I think within like trying to think, probably less than a week, he had like I had demoed out a bigwig song for him, and then he just like went to town on it and totally transformed it into something that I could have never done with my own fingers and eyes and ears.
It's my I gotta say, of all the ones released so far, I think that the Flavor Ice cover may be the best.
I think so. I think everybody seems to like that one the best. I think it has the most kind of emotion and passion and fire behind it.
It's good to hear him sing again too. Like that's the other thing I love about you doing this project, is you're bringing some of like the other side of that. A lot of musicians went on and done stuff, but you're also getting guys who we haven't heard from in a while to come on here, and like it's great to hear them again.
Totally. And I think as the project unfolds even more, I mean, we're on, let's say, song number 9. There's another 25 songs in the works, let's say.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
We got quite a bit left to hear.
Oh yeah. I took a bit bigger bite than I thought. So yeah, but no, but even guys like Alf Bartone from X Number 5 did a great take on a Lifetime song. And X Number 5 were like one of my favorite bands from the scene. I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. They're not like anyone huge, but
yeah, I discovered them from the Movie Life split they did.
Right, exactly. So they have like their name out there. I think they were one of the most underrated bands in the Jersey scene. But like other guys like John Tomillo from Folly. I don't think they had done anything in probably since like 2011, 2012. I know they had reunited. People were very excited to hear him. Mikey Erg, who ironically Heath and I actually are big Ergs fans, but we only discovered them maybe like in the last year or so.
Oh, they're great. I love the Ergs.
It's crazy. Like I thought I would have totally been into a band like that, back in the day, and I just never even knew about them until about a year ago. And once I heard them, I said, well, I got to get Mikey Erg to do a song. So he did Punk Rock Academy by Ab in his package. And we also have to cover an Erg song. So we're doing one of those. and Heath is actually playing lead guitar on that too. So. Oh, nice.
So he's on here a couple times then.
Heath is funny because I think obviously he enjoys playing guitar and he enjoys being in music, and I think he might miss it a little bit too. So he he just keeps on, whenever he's done with the song, he's like, okay, so what do you got for me next?
Oh, that's
So,
that's awesome.
right, so it's kind of like I can kind of just depend on him to make these songs sound great. I think he's on 4 or 5 different songs at this point.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I think two of them have been released so far. He did obviously Flavor Ice by Bigwig, and then he was just the song we just released recently was Best Intentions originally by One Cool Guy with Jay Foley, who's the singer of Day 19. So Heath has a big fingerprint on the project, that's for sure.
That's cool. And you know what? Maybe you are inching him towards like new music, because when I interviewed him a few months ago, it started. He was doing the covers on Instagram, and now he's doing these songs. That you're pushing him towards something, and I like it.
We'll see. I know. He loves being a dad and being at home. So I don't think we'll see him touring anytime soon. But who knows?
But new music is
a new project. Right.
Yeah. And so was this all basically an idea that kind of came to you during the pandemic? Like when did this, like, initially the idea for the whole thing start for you?
I guess that's a good question. Yes, in short, it's kind of a pandemic project. I actually hadn't played guitar in a long time, and it's even further back. This is kind of the weird crux of everything, and kind of ironic in a way. I wasn't really ever in a band before.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I played guitar throughout high school and college. For about 6 months, I was in a really, I keep on saying shitty hardcore band, but we were amateurish hardcore, and basically we were in it for like 6 months, played one show, and then we broke up. And our only claim to fame was that our drummer, this is kind of insane. Years later, our drummer was great. He was actually a jazz drummer. He didn't really fit in a hardcore band. But about 5-6 years later, I'm like watching MTV, and all of a sudden I see him in a video with Matisyahu, who was like the
really
Orthodox Jewish reggae star.
Yeah.
So he became the drummer for Matisyahu.
That's awesome.
So yeah, and so he lived his life that way. But anyway, the band was nothing. And actually, we were called Never Again. That was our name. And literally, we played one show, and we never again played after that. It's
true
not just
true to the name.
Right, it's not just a joke about the band. But then after that, I always wanted to be in a band. I always wanted to be involved in music, and I kind of took a hiatus from college at that point. And we were always hanging around with the guys from the scene, and my friend Steve Jaworski from the band LWL, we were hanging out one night at Dunkin' Donuts, as he's written a song about that. But he asked me if I wanted to go on tour with them, just as like kind of like a helper / roadie / driver. And so I agreed, and that kind of jump-started my what turned into actually tour booking. So I started booking their tours after that tour, and then people started noticing and came to me. Other bands started noticing and came to me to book their tours, and it turned into this, thing where I was, at one point, I had a roster of 10 bands that I was booking on tours across, the U.S. and Canada.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So it was, and I had to like expand and have a guy on the West Coast help me out. But we booked bands like LWL, Welcome Home Travis, a Wilhelm Scream. Before they were Wilhelm Scream, they were called Smack and Isaiah.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, did some stuff with Big D and the Kids Table, Whippersnapper, Unsung Zeros. there's a list somewhere, and I'm forgetting a few names, and I apologize. But it was like this thing that I did for 3 years, and on top of like booking shows in the Jersey scene, helping out my friend Ricky and all our friends put on these shows, these bomb shelter shows, which were like really big shows. And we also had small shows. We had the bigwig 100 capacity VFW hall shows, and then Jimmy Eat World 1,000 capacity Wayne Firehouse shows that we would do. And the cool thing about that stuff, the bomb shelter, going back to kind of building the scene, it was Ricky put on these shows, and he would quote unquote employ all of his friends. So there'd be like 15 to 20 of us to help him do crowd control, clean up, general maintenance of the show, doing the door, stuff like that, helping out the sound guy. And when I say employee, that just means like he paid us with a meal at the diner after the show. And we all just did it, we all just did it because it was fun. And it was like, I can't believe I'm getting to work with or work on a show where this band is playing that I've been listening to now for like the last 5 years. But it was also just, it was a bunch of friends getting together and kind of creating this thing in a way, even though we didn't know what we were creating. But what was the original question?
We were talking about just kind of how this whole thing kind of started for you, the idea of Jersey Interchange.
So back to Jersey Interchange. It kind of needed the backstory on that, just because
I think it's also interesting. You have an impressive list there too of bands that you booked.
It was cool. I got to work with some bands that I became friends with and still am friends with today, that I just, like I said, like listening to the bands that you love and then actually being friends and working with them is just like the perfect combination. And then I decided to go into television and film. So I followed that path instead. I did some music videos and stuff like that. So I still had my feet in music, but I decided to follow a different career path. And that's when maybe I got out of the music industry, and that's when all these bands started blowing up. So maybe I had some weird effect on that. Or no, I'm kidding. But my exit, caused all that.
You destroyed the scene, man.
I totally did. I totally broke it down. So let's fast forward 20 years. I guess about in December or January, I just picked up a guitar that was in my mom's attic. It was an electric guitar that I had from like 1997. Hadn't played it. I think I played that in that hardcore band I was in, and I just put it away and never looked at it again. So I kind of refurbed it and started playing again, and then lo and behold, COVID-19 strikes, and I'm sitting at home with nothing to do. So I decided to just like start recording some old songs from back in the day, and the first one was a song by a band called NJ Joystick, who I'm still friends with those guys today. And I started singing it and realized my voice really sucks. And so I kind of just asked one of my friends, Dave, who was in a band called Taxi Cab Samurais, if he would sing it, and he was totally down. And it kind of just blossomed from there. I just started reaching out to Steve from LWL, to Heath, to Travis from Senseless, and Janet and Nina. Nina is actually the guy I was talking about before, Ricky. That's his wife, and she was in a band called Avery with Janet. They did a cover of.
They do a Lane Meyer one.
Right.
Really?
Right.
But that's probably behind Flavor Ice is like my second favorite cover on there. Really, really good.
It's so good, and they did such a great job on just making it sound amazing. That was the first song that we released, and I think like people heard it and they were like, oh wow, this guy's for real. And furthermore, these ladies are still rocking, 20 years on. So like I said, it's just blossomed from there. This is the longest answer possible, but we're getting back to the point. and it keeps on growing. Like I have people emailing me, messaging me every day, like, hey, can I participate in the song? And it's half me reaching out, half other people, kind of inquiring of me. So I'm just happy to be in this position at this point in my life, I guess. I don't know.
That is like, it is pretty cool too. And like, I'm looking at how impressive it is. I mean, that has to be a pretty big undertaking to go in this. And like, you have so many artists that you're working with. You have this huge list of songs, and to kind of jump into it and do it like that. I mean, has it gotten easier? I imagine in the beginning, starting out, that had to be quite a bit of work for one person to start like getting all that together.
At first, it was actually easy at first because I didn't really have that many songs. It was like the project. I don't think the project went past 6 songs at first.
Oh, really?
I mean? Yeah, I didn't really have an idea for it to be like this grand, thing that it's now turned into. But people just like became so excited about it. Like I in turn was excited that people were interested, and I would just start demoing songs, and kind of I back then I would actually have like 5 or 6 songs as options to offer to people when I went out to them. But now it's like to the point where I have no songs and people are coming to me, and I'm like, all right, give me like 2 weeks, I'll have something for you, and then you can change it up or do whatever you want with it. And that's kind of also a cool thing, just like collaborating with people, because I play guitar on a lot of this stuff, and I program the drums on a lot of this stuff, but I also am really open to people just like saying, I don't think that's going to work, but how about we do this? Or there's some songs that like I'm not even on, and that's fine with me. I don't really care. If somebody has a better idea for making that song sound better, take it away. Like with Heath on Bigwig, I gave him a demo. He pretty much re-recorded it all, and I was like, perfect. This is what I want from the project. Just something to have these songs at a higher level than I could give them, I guess.
That is really neat. And then you kind of get, I feel like, because what I like too is how some of the songs they sound like they're kind of true to the original, and then some of the other ones is like people are kind of putting their different takes on it, and they're kind of making it kind of something different. There's a nice variety in there, and I feel like you probably get that from collaborating, where someone's like, yeah, like let's stray away from the original, like here's this idea, and it's like it kind of gives it a life of its own, maybe ideas that you didn't think of originally,
Totally. Yeah, totally. And I actually support, kind of straying, because, like the songs are great on their own, but like, what are we going to bring to it that's different? And what's the point of doing a song exactly how it was, I guess, is how I feel about it. Because it's already been done. Why don't you put your own flavor on it and give it a little spin, little angle that will draw other people in, and newer and older people might enjoy this song and then connect back to the older track.
And I mean, like the other thing I was thinking too with these songs, I mean, obviously there's probably not like tabs or chords and stuff to go off of for a lot of it. I mean, are there any songs that have been like difficult to learn? Because I assume you're learning a lot of this by ear and just kind of playing along.
A lot of it's by ear. I think there's been one song I've asked one of the original artists for chords for, but for the most part, it's been my ear. And yeah, I've referred to some tabs online as well. But that's the other thing. Like when I learned to play guitar, I took lessons for like 9 months when I was in high school, and kind of just like went off on my own there. And I never learned how to read music for guitar. I used to play cello when I was like 10 or 11, and I was into all that and knew how to read music. But, that all goes out the window when you don't play for a long time. So, yeah, I was totally on tablatures for a long time. And, the tablature is basically like a different way to read the music if you're not music theory. It's music language, but not notes and beats and, stuff like that. So for people that aren't familiar. But yeah, it's mostly it's mostly figuring out an arrangement on my end first, and whether or not that arrangement sticks or changes down the road with whoever takes over the song. It's just more about creating like a spine or a skeleton for somebody to work with, and hopefully, I can have a little bit of of that vision as well in the final product.
I think it's impressive too, because the other thing, I mean, I know this is all obviously like home recordings and stuff. I mean, I'm assuming that this is like your first time kind of dabbling in that, which it was impressive because the whole thing sounds really good. It doesn't sound like, which I guess, I don't know, because I have this conversation a lot where it's like nowadays home recording doesn't really sound like home recording, but it's still, totally. Yeah, like like people don't even know anymore, but like, I still think it's so impressive how it came out. I mean, was this kind of your first time doing kind of music production and recording and stuff like that?
Well, thank you. That's a big compliment. Yes and no. Like, I used to dabble in like little 4-track, cassette tape recorders back in the day. But
true home recording,
but never in a studio, never anything like, I definitely, had to teach myself. But even then, like, there were so many things I didn't know that my mixers, Ryan and Nick, taught me, and Heath too. Heath actually taught me a lot of stuff just by kind of seeing what he was doing. But as far as my setup, like, really, it's just my guitar into a DI into my computer into GarageBand, and like programming drums in GarageBand, and then getting all the rest of the tracks together for our mixers to take over once they're ready to go. But it definitely was something that took me at least 4 months to actually master before even kind of get into the Jersey Interchange. I listened to some of my early GarageBand tracks, whether they were originals or covers, and some of them are pretty awfully recorded. But I think, but like you said, overall, like for a home recording, it definitely sounds like I paid a few $1,000s per song in the studio. I'd
agree with that for sure.
And that's definitely one of the more like popular compliments I get on the song. So I don't take that for granted. And I thank whoever invented GarageBand and, the modern interface for that, because otherwise I wouldn't know what I was doing.
I mean, it's kind of crazy because if you think about like the quality of some of those songs that you are covering now, like back in the day, like what you did have for you, like there were people back then who some of the songs you're covering now probably sound cleaner and like more clear, right. And everything. Whereas like back then they're paying that money to get those recorded and they can do like one take and it costs, a couple grand or something. It's so insane where it's come, in like 20 years.
Right. And I used to go with my friends to the studio and watch what was going on. And that always actually interested me. There is a guy still, his name's Chris Badami, who operates. Yeah. He did like all the NJ scene bands for a long time. And I used to go up there and watch my friends record at his place. And then I don't know if I went to any other studios, but that was like, I definitely was always interested in seeing what he was doing, how they were recording, but I never actually did that myself. It was just kind of like one of those things I was a fly on the wall for.
That's still pretty cool. I mean, that guy, like for people who don't know him, I feel like he's produced just about like everything of that era. Like his name is probably in those liner notes somewhere.
He is. Yeah. He's definitely, he's got the gold bars for the NJPP scene. And then he went and did like, Mike Patton from Faith No More with the Dillinger Escape Plan, and a whole bunch of other like bands that weren't even like considered NJPP or whatever. NJPP stand for people that aren't familiar. NJPP we titled our scene the NJPP New Jersey Pop Punk. So I'll reference it as that. I'm sure.
For people who are listening who maybe aren't familiar with that scene or like, the smaller bands in it, I mean, you want to name off a couple bands that people should go check out? Like They're Stuck in Quarantine. There is such a huge scene to go check out, but it's like maybe a couple off the top of your head where you'd go if you were trying to get someone to listen to that era, like a couple songs or bands you would recommend?
Definitely. I'd be remiss to not shout out my friends in Taxi Cab Samurais, who I grew up with basically, and SETI Alpha 6, NJ Joystick, LWL, One Cool Guy. Who else? Let's see. Well, everybody knows Midtown. I don't need to name them. Lane Meyer. There's like so many bands. Like you were saying before, there's the NJPP Archives, which was put together by Joe Polito.
That thing rules.
It's so good, and it's so expansive. He spent, I don't know how many hours he spent doing that, but he digitized. There's at least 150 to 200 bands on the SoundCloud, if not more. I mean, I could just be lowballing there, but I can't imagine how much work he put into it. But he's been a great help too. He's been hosting all the Jersey Interchange songs, and kind of like helping with the marketing. And also he's actually played bass on a few tracks, and we'll have a track that he put together all by himself. He's doing a cover by a band called Your Mom'll Love Us, which I had always heard of them, but I never really knew them. But he like took this track and made it into like this really cool face-to-face sounding update. Yeah.
That sounds interesting. I want to hear that.
Yeah, that's almost actually ready to go into mix. So that'll be probably out in the next 1 to 2 months, I would say.
That's awesome. And I mean, yeah, anyone listening to this, I mean, that's your place to go to find, like, I've discovered, I can't even tell you how many bands off of that archive. I mean, it's definitely, it's expansive and it's nuts. And I mean, I think people would really see kind of what we're talking about. Like if you really don't know the scene, you go look at that and you're like, oh wow, they weren't kidding. Like there really were just tons and tons and tons of bands in really a fairly short time too. I mean, I forget the years you were saying earlier, but I mean, roughly around a decade, you know, all of this kind of happened within about that time frame, I feel like. Right. You know?
Well, I think one of the cool things too is like, I guess around the time me and my friends were probably like 19, 20. And there was a surge of younger kids though too, like 15, 16 years old, that were starting these bands. Like I mentioned before, Outline and Jack Antonoff. They were really young. Another band that people should really check out called Wholesale. They were also, before Wholesale, they were known as OL Rebellion. They were these like 16-year-old phenoms, 17-year-old phenoms, and pretty much had this like great album that they put out, and then they all went to college and called it quits. And I think one or two of them still played some music after that, but it was just like one of those releases that it was like a one and done, and people were kind of left with their mouths, you know, and their tongues kind of like hitting the floor, you know, because they wanted more. But yeah, you know, it was just cool to see like the youth, even though we were still the youth, there was an even kind of younger scene coming up too. And that just, you know, it shows like your kids like Hidden in Plain View and Face First, and you know, which turned into Houston Calls. Those younger kids were the next quote unquote wave in 2001, 2002 that started getting noticed. You know,
that's probably like the last wave too, right? If you think about it, probably like the final wave of the scene.
I would say the final like legitimate wave, because then you got into like the quote unquote emo boy bands, which yeah.
Something totally different.
Right.
That
but they had a few of those emo boy bands I'm not gonna say I didn't listen to, but for the most part they're all forgotten at this point.
And you know, it is crazy too, because like being like the last of that scene, there's no way a scene like that I don't think will ever exist again. I mean, whether it's just the magic of it, whether it's the internet, whatever you want to put on it, I just don't know that a scene like that can exist. I think, and like there are other scenes that have existed other places, but I don't know that one has ever been like that. Like the one thing like I always think of is just exactly that people besides myself really have interest in it who have nothing to do with it. I mean, I'm 27. Like I found all these bands well over a decade, if not more, after they'd all broken up, and just kind of randomly discovered bands through comps and you know, using the NJPP archives and like, you know, just old shit. That's like right. That. And it's like, but that really is a testament how good that is, where it's like, you know, how many other like local, I'm not looking up like the Nebraska pop punk scene of like the, you know, early 90s and stuff. It's New Jersey. Like you guys like one of the only ones, you know, and I just don't think something like that will ever exist again, you know?
Right. No, I hope it does, because it was such a great experience, and I would want somebody else and a lot more people to experience that for themselves. But like, yeah, I think it's kind of awesome, and it speaks to everything we're talking about, that you are. I mean, I'm 42, you're 27, so you were I don't even know, what was that? You were like a 4-year-old when all this was going on, I guess, right?
Yeah, like a little kid.
But it's cool because it's like you were talking about comps and stuff that, you know, really even in 2012 that you were hearing all these bands on. I was talking about before the Pinball Records compilation.
Oh yeah,
which that was just such a fire starter for our scene. It, you know, Jay, who's like one of the best guys in the world. You ask anybody about him, they'll tell you that's their favorite person to ever live. So Jay started this Pinball Records, basically, I think, just to put out like 7 inches of his friend's band. So he started putting out the Joystick, Taxi Cab, One Cool Guy, which got into Nowhere Fast, and then obviously Midtown was kind of his. I think Midtown was his. I don't want to say peak, but that was like his biggest release. And but this comp that he put together was pretty much everybody in the NJ scene had this comp, and it had like early songs from Catch 22. It had, you know, Humble Beginnings. It had the Royalties, which was, you know, all these bands that went on to become, you know, Midtown and well, Catch 22 is Catch 22, but it was just a kind of defining release, I think, for the scene.
Oh, it sounds like it. It sounds like a precursor to, like you were saying, like precursor to like what was to come.
Right. Totally was. And I attribute the success of our scene, a lot of it, to that comp, because it's called Pinball Family and Distant Relatives compilation. And it basically just kind of, you know, it was just a collaboration of all that we kind of had, like the shining beacons of the scene, I guess, is what it is. And I think he sold out 2 or 3 pressings of it within, you know, the first year or something like that.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. And that was huge back then, because, you know, our scene was still burgeoning. As, you know, for the most part, you could expect to go to a show and, you know, hang out with maybe a good show would obviously be like 400 kids, but, you know, an average show would be about 100 to 150, I would say.
That's still like, not like local.
Oh, it's great.
Like, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, you think about that and it's like, do you know how many local bands would kill for that, to have a scene like that? Like, that's massive for local bands.
Like a failure of a show would be like 60, 70 kids.
Yeah, like even that people would kill for.
Making a profit. Right.
That's
You're
insane.
still most likely making a profit at the door with 60 kids.
That's so cool.
And it was just, you know, the excitement within the scene was also just the best, you know, like people were always looking for that next flyer, you know, who's going to play this. And, you know, Ricky would always have his like calendar of shows for the next like month or two. And it would always be these like crazy bills that now you're just like, what? Like At the Drive-In Saves the Day, Newfound Glory, Midtown. What is that? Like, how did that ever happen? You know, I think I could be wrong on one of those bands, but I think at least 3 of the 4 played together at the Manville Elks Lodge.
That's so cool.
Like, those are the shows, you know, like Jimmy World played a show right after, this was after Clarity, between Clarity and Bleed American.
Oh, nice.
I want to say we got over 1,000 people at the door, and we had to close the door, but it was just like one of those shows that you're like, holy shit, we have something here. And I think one of the biggest shows we did as Bomb Shelter was, I want to say it was Bigwig, Catch-22, Ataris, maybe Weston played that too, and I think that was somewhere at like 11 or 1200 capped.
Oh wow!
Right. So it was. I could be wrong, and I could be like, but I think it was around that for attendance.
That's just so impressive. And I mean, once again, talking about how you guys are all like teenagers in your 20s, like all, and it's all just this really self-sufficient, like you're talking about, like the comps coming out on a local, on a local label, putting out local bands, and local guys are putting on the shows, and, locals are coming to see it. Like it's all this, it's just amazing. It really is almost an anomaly. Like even that attendance, like, is just so insane. People don't get those attendances for local shows, crazy. But,
and that was the other thing. People loved going to, I mean, obviously bands loved coming to play for Ricky, because Ricky, I don't honestly, aside from marketing costs for future shows, I don't think Ricky kept most of that money. I think he gave it right back to the bands. So if you're really a touring band, like, you'd have your guarantee that you had through your booking agent, but like he would just give them all the back end. Like it was, so they could have like a $500 guarantee, but they might have walked out of there with $2,000, and
oh man, that would mean the world to a touring band.
Right. And that makes the rest of their 7 dates on their tour, like, okay, if we fail on every date, then okay, fine, we had this one show that we can survive on. So
damn, I hope they weren't starting their tours in New Jersey, because you start with something like that and start any all the other ones, like, my God, like they really do have something there.
Right. It was, and I think, all those bands just, that was one of the reasons all these bands came through, and that we had the privilege of seeing these bands that are, at least from out of state, that blew up into these, bigger acts, because we had such a good scene, and because they wanted to come, not just for the money, but because we had kids that were really into the music and could sing their songs, even if they never played New Jersey before. That
is really awesome. And as we're kind of closing out here and getting back into Jersey Interchange, are there any like artists that you like as you were saying, you're kind of continuing with it? I mean, there's some dream artists or people you would like to work on the project with. Like, who are some people you'd like to work with here in the future?
Definitely. Would love. And these are all, reach, we'll put it out into the universe, but, I'd love for Gabe to come back to come back home and do a song. Brian Fallon from Gaslight Anthem, I think, would be awesome to work with.
That'd be cool.
Trying to think. There's a few people I've put feelers out, and they're just not ready to do it right now. I think they're just working on so many things. And they're a little bit, their names are a little bit bigger, the bands that they worked with. But I honestly, I'm really happy with everybody that's said yes so far. And it will just be a matter of time. I don't know how much longer it'll go. I don't know, what the shelf life of this is, but I'm hoping to at least continue on until the end of quarantine. I guess that's my goal for this part, at this point. But if Brian Fallon, Gabe Supporter, you want to come back to the Jersey scene, the door is open. So
that would be a pretty sweet one. Both of those would be cool. And yeah, I mean, you have an insane list already. I mean, like you said, you have like 50 different artists playing on there with you, and you have, I mean, like 25 more songs you said are going to get released.
Yeah. Let me have the list here. Yeah, there's a lot of words here, and it's probably 25 to 30 more songs.
And you're releasing those weekly.
Releasing those weekly. We'll probably take a break, just a week break around Labor Day. But I have songs scheduled into the new year.
Wow.
And I'm only doing one song with my own vocals. That's the only song in the whole thing that I am not embarrassed enough, and I'm taking on a Misfits song with another guy from the scene. So
nice.
We'll see.
I didn't even think about Misfits. That is New Jersey. That counts.
Right.
Lodi Boys.
Well, and that's Right, and that's the other thing. It's like some of the bands that we're covering and or some of the people aren't necessarily from New Jersey, but they had such an impact on the scene at that time. And yeah, Misfits are an old band, but like, how can you not be a Misfits fan and be from New Jersey, and not see their impact within the scene? But like other bands, like the Adam in This Package, he was from Philadelphia, but he played Jersey so many times in a short amount of time, and kids just were so into him. And I think, without Jersey, I shouldn't say that, but Jersey helped him kind of launch, I think.
Now that makes sense, because I've heard that with a couple different bands who were Philly bands who kind of also associate with New Jersey, where they kind of swing back and forth. Like, yeah, we're from Philadelphia, but it's like, honestly, we kind of got our start in New Jersey. Like, that was the scene we were a part of.
I mean, Philly had its own scene, and definitely had a good scene. I remember going to some Philly shows, but I think it was weird. Jersey just had this great little kind of stopover in between New York City and Philadelphia and Boston, and it was like a perfect kind of melting pot, like we said, of like ska, punk, hardcore, and emo. I mean, we had bands like Penfold, who aren't like the hugest band, but they're really influential in I think a lot of emo and even punk scenes.
Oh, absolutely. No, they're definitely a name I see get thrown around for sure.
Yeah.
But so for people, I mean, New Jersey or NJPP, I mean, there's all the archives up there and stuff, but as far as a Jersey Interchange, I mean, like where can people find you? I know you got some social media up there. Where can people hear the songs? Where can people find everything for you online?
Definitely. Well, people can definitely hear the songs at the NJPP archives. That's where they're being hosted, and you can't miss it. There's you go to soundcloud.com/NJPP archives. There's a what's it called, thumbnail for Jersey Interchange. You just click that, and as of right now, there's 9-10 songs up there. And what else? We have facebook.com/Jersey Interchange, as well as Instagram.com/Jersey Interchange. And really, this next song that we're releasing next week is actually being premiered by Brooklyn Vegan.
Oh, nice.
Which is, they've been really cool. They've now written, this will be the third write-up, but they've really helped kind of promote and get the word out about the project. And again, it was just like kind of, it started from nothing, and now I'm like, sending out press releases, going on podcasts and all this other stuff. And, I really want it to grow, and I want more people to hear it. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think people should. I want to get the word out there. I mean, I think it's such a rad concept. It's such a good idea. And it's also, I mean, as we've been talking about, like entry, like if you want to get into that whole like scene and that era of music, Jersey Interchange too, like what you're doing is also a good kind of entry level, because you're like, oh shit, like I like this song, and then you go back and you're like, who'd they cover,
Right,
and then you can go through that. So I mean, you're doing that as well, kind of. I feel like helping expose people who may not know otherwise. Might go, oh wow, Heath from Midtown's doing something, I liked Midtown, and then you start going down that rabbit hole of, oh man, I didn't realize all these bands they came up with.
I appreciate that. That's a great compliment. I mean, I guess in a way it's sort of a Rosetta Stone to the old scene, but for the new age. I think go to anybody out there, go on the NJPP archives, spend like 1 or 2 hours, if not more, and just kind of
quarantine. Spend all goddamn day on
right. There. That's true. I mean, look, I think Joe and I would tell you there's some songs that didn't hold up, but you go through those, you see what did hold up, and those are real gems. And I think there's a lot of music from back then that still it just resonates today. And I think if people can still find that online and maybe even at your local record store, if those exist after quarantine. I hope they do.
Me too.
Yeah, but I know online, if you go to Discogs, I think it's Discogs, you can usually find some NJPP vinyl or CDs up there too for sale.
I've definitely bought some off there. That's normally like your best bet, honestly, Discogs.
Right.
Then get a little rundown of the discography as well, because that's the other thing too, is you forget a lot of those bands are all pre-internet, so you can't go back and like find social media pages or like a lot of like things archived. It's like, nah, there's none of that. Like it's all gone.
Yeah.
Like that, even if they had like a GeoCities or something, it's like that doesn't exist anymore. You're not gonna find that.
It's weird to think of a world without YouTube, but I mean, even on the NJPP Archive YouTube channel, there's like maybe at most 20 videos.
Oh, and really? That's it?
Yeah, like I think 20 videos of like, you know, live shows at like Skaters World or the Wayne Firehouse. But, you know, people that archival, I guess, what's the word? That just process of archiving that history didn't really translate to the YouTube generation, I guess. I'm not sure where all those videos went. I know people definitely had video cameras back then, so I'd like to see a lot of those shows.
Yeah, I want to see more stuff on Earth. I mean, you know, to be able, that is the nice thing of the internet, is being able to, I mean, it's the whole reason I would say I've probably been able to discover all this stuff, you know, without it, that some of that stuff would just be lost in time. So yeah, to be able to archive it, and once again, like you kind of passing that torch on and like, you know, getting it out for more people to hear, I think is an absolutely great thing to keep that whole era and that scene alive, you know?
Definitely. And I thank you for that.
Well, right now we gotta play some Jersey Interchange. We're gonna start off, like I said earlier, probably my favorite one released so far, but I mean, we have tons more to go, so who knows what the best one's gonna be, but this is my favorite so far. Right now, we got Jersey Interchange with a bigwig cover featuring a former guest of the show, Heath Saraceno. This is Flavor Ice right here on the Power Chord Hour.
She's never coming back again.
Desert Island. All time, top 5 most memorable breakups in chronological order are as follows.
When it's over, go and leave me. Just don't say that I never wanted you. I thought I showed you how much I liked you. Too bad I lost you. Another dream come true enough to tell me that you're leaving me today. I guess I never meant that much to anyway. Still the stars will shine over the lake and on your face. God, I miss you, and God, I miss this place.
Punk Rock Academy.
I was fighting the mold in the bowl with my pee when a thought popped into my brain. If all of us hated high school so much, why was nothing ever changed? So I called Brian up with my plan that's red hot. We got a private institution in the name of punk rock. We got government funding, our own private road. It's 666 for a radio snow code. I had a dream when I was in high school that I attended the Punk Rock Academy. I had a dream when I was in high school
little girl. And now I'm an old broken down piece of meat. And I'm alone. And I deserve to be all alone. I just don't want you to hate me.
Right here on the Power Chord Hour, that was Jersey Interchange with Somewhere in the Swamps of New Jersey. Before that was Jersey Interchange with Punk Rock Academy. Before that was Jersey Interchange with What a Shitty Summer. And opening up that block of music was Jersey Interchange with Flavor Ice. I want to thank Christian once again for calling in and doing that. I had a blast talking to him. He educated me on a bunch of stuff that I didn't know about in the New Jersey pop punk scene, and also some bands that I didn't know about. And it's kind of cool on the radio show this week, since we're going to be airing this interview and it did go over an hour. We're going to do a 2-hour episode of the radio show this week, and since we got extra time, I asked Christian a bunch of New Jersey pop punk songs from bands who people may not know as well, so not your Midtowns, not your Saves the Days, not bands like that. I asked for some more obscure ones, and he gave me this humongous list of, even more bands that I could even fit on there, which was awesome. But he sent me this huge master list of bands and songs to play. So we got all the ones off of his list for this week's show, and we're just going to play a bunch of, just different New Jersey pop punk bands and ska bands and emo bands from New Jersey from back in the day on this week's radio show afterwards. But if you want, you can check that out depending on when you're listening to this. If you listen as it comes out, the radio show will be this Friday night at 10 Eastern on 107.9 WRFA. You can also listen online at WRFALP.com, and you can hear a bunch of probably bands that you haven't, if this intrigues you and, you're not really, you don't know much about the New Jersey pop punk scene, I would say check out this week's radio show, because after the interview, there's about a good hour's worth of bands that you've probably never heard before that you're going to fall in love with, just like I did. I mean, that list had tons of bands that I'd never listened to before. My personal favorite being LWL. I had heard of them, never listened to them, and he sent me Rubber Band It Was, and we actually is one of the first songs we're going to be playing on the radio show this week. But it's like, my God, like, this band's amazing. Like, this band should have been as big as like Green Day. Like, I listen to them, I'm going like, they're on par with bands like Green Day and stuff who were playing arenas at that time. It's like a band like that should have been just fucking huge. And but there's a lot of bands from that scene who really should have been, and it's cool that it's all being documented. That's the other thing, to check out those Jersey Interchange songs. They're out every week on the New Jersey Pop Punk SoundCloud, the NJPP. So go check it out. There's a new song basically for the rest of the week for at least the rest of the year, and it sounds like it just keeps picking up momentum, so who knows, it may keep going from there. But there's already like 9 or 10 songs up on the NJPP SoundCloud, so go check that out, and make sure you check it out every Monday. They have a huge list of upcoming artists, and it'll blow your mind who's on there, and some really, really cool covers that they're doing. And just well worth checking out. Got to thank Christian again. Go check out Jersey Interchange. They're on social media as well, Facebook and Instagram. So go give them a follow there. And give us a follow if you're not following us. We're at Power Chord Hour on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're on Spotify. We're on your radio dial, like I said, every Friday night at 10 Eastern on 107.9 WRFA in Jamestown, New York, to celebrate our 200th episode. And you can listen to that radio show from anywhere in the world at WRFALP. And you can stream the station there, listen into my show and all the other great programming on there. And that's going to be it for this week. Hope you enjoyed this week's podcast. And thank you so much for checking it out. Also, if you want one of those Power Chord Hour t-shirts, give me a review wherever you listen to your podcast. Send me a screenshot of said review to powerchordhour@gmail.com. I'll send you out a shirt, some stickers, some pics. It'll be a little Power Chord Hour care package as a thank you for rating us, because we need some more ratings. I'm in the great words of the Temptations, I am not too proud to beg. So give me some reviews and I'll send you a shirt. And until next week for the Power Chord Hour, I'm Anthony Merchant. Thanks for listening.